answer. If you'd like to stand when you're answering, you're welcome to do that. Wendy and Joe Slayton will be timers. Joe will run the stopwatch and Wendy will have the official stop. Wendy, show the audience what that says. Okay. Wendy will hold up a 1 minute warning, and then so you'll need to wrap your answer up. So we'll start on this end, and so Ms. Ager, you'll have the first question, and each of you will get to answer, and then the next question, Zelda, will go to you, and on like that. Then we'll have time for audience questions. Before we start with the questions, I'm going to give you all a brief couple of minutes just to give you a, hello, whatever you want to say to the crowd before we start with the questions. So, Ms. Ager, go ahead.
Kick it off, okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank y'all so much for, thank you. No, is this on? Can you guys hear me okay? No?
Speak closer into the mic.
There's a button.
How's that?
That's better.
Perfect. Okay, good. Thank you all so much for having us. I always love driving over here to Clay County. Done it lots of times in my life. My good friend Bass Hyatt here, who I've known for a long time in the cattle business, and I've always enjoyed coming down here to see this beautiful part of the world. I'm a fourth generation farmer outside of Asheville in the little community of Fairview. My family's been there for over 100 years. My great-grandparents moved there in 1916. My great-grandfather was a Presbyterian minister who came down here, and he started a farmers co-op with his wife, my great-grandmother, called the Farmers Federation. And how much time do we have? 3 minutes? Like 10 minutes?
Yeah, not 10 minutes.
Okay. I don't want to take up all the time.
All right, Nancy.
I didn't know how abridged I need to be. But no, my family's been involved in Western North Carolina for a long, long time, trying to help bring economic development to the region, trying to help rural folks all over Western North Carolina get ahead, get a better shot in life. And the farm at home in Fairview was a dairy farm, like a lot of small farms, and we had grew some tobacco as well. By the 1990s, we sold the dairy in 1989. And the farm was mostly used to keep me and my brothers out of trouble, which was generally successful, but not always successful. And so that was good. And but my wife and I came back to the farm, kind of interested in new ideas about sustainable agriculture and regenerative farming. And so we came back. We were young and idealistic about coming back to the family farm. And then we are 25 years later, and we've raised 3 boys out there, and we're still fired up about making the farm work and working with people all over the region. And that was a hard journey. We built a little meat company as well called Hickory Nut Gap. We're selling meat and Ingalls down here, and I always like to pitch for that. But we've been selling local beef and pasture-raised pork for a long time. We've got 25 employees and really been through the entrepreneurial experience, know what that's like. Sleepless nights, making hard decisions about people that you work for you, stuff like that. And for this campaign, I always say we're the values that build Hickory Nut Gap, and the values are really just building a meat company that builds good for the land, agriculture that's good for the land, agriculture that's good for animals from a high welfare standpoint, and ultimately it's good for the people, the farmers that we work with, our customers, and ultimately the employees. Time?
I think it's time.
Okay, that's me.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Zelda Briarwood, and I am looking forward to providing answers in regards to who I am, what we stand for, and how I want to represent y'all up in Washington. Let's get the boring stuff out of the way real quick. My background is a BA in psychology. I also am a wilderness educator, crisis services manager, and case manager for survivors of sexual violence and human trafficking. My background is public health, social services, direct services, and education. And when I look up at Washington, I see a distinct lack of understanding of those aspects of our society. But the biggest one that I see a lack of understanding for is what it means to be working class. Because if there's anyone who knows the value of a dollar, it's the working class. It sure as hell ain't the ultra rich or the billionaires or the corporations. It's us, the people who are dealing with affordability, with an economy that does not work for everyone, with an education system that is failing our students, with people being priced out of healthcare. That's ridiculous. We are in the richest country in the world, and yet we are failing our society, our people, in getting basic needs met. And it continues to get worse every single day as we see nothing but chaos from the current administration. People sitting on their hands while due process is completely ignored. Habeas corpus isn't a thing anymore. Our Constitution, I think we all know what our current president would like to do with the Constitution. Point being is, y'all deserve better. We all deserve better. You deserve someone who is going to fight for you. They're not in it for power or profit or personal gain. They have honesty, integrity, a willingness to change, and willing to have the hard conversations with every one of their constituents, not just those who voted for them. In my time today, I hope to reflect to you why I am the best candidate and why I will always be beholden to the people of Western North Carolina. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. It is gorgeous out here. Thank you for being here on a Saturday. My name is Richard Hudspeth, and I'm a family physician. And I've been practicing in Henderson County and really across all Western North Carolina for over 2 decades. And I'm in this race because what I've seen in the past year is the dangerous dismantling of our healthcare infrastructure, the erosion in trust of medical information, and massive, massive cuts to research that likely shortchanges our future for medical advances. Now, I've been advocating for healthcare with Chuck Edwards for years around what we need in Western North Carolina. We see things very differently about healthcare. He talks about, for example, Medicaid as a handout. Well, let me tell you, not only as a physician, but I was the CEO of Western North Carolina's largest community health center. And I know access to health care and programs like Medicare, Medicaid, transform people's lives. Let me tell you about a young teenager came into our clinic needing help. He left his home at a very young age just because it was a rough home environment for him. When he left, he was homeless, didn't have a job, didn't have transportation, and had limited access to health care. With our community health center, by expanding the care that we did, we more than tripled the patients that we now serve in Western North Carolina to over 80,000. We more than quadrupled our workforce to help us take care of folks in Western North Carolina to over 700. And he got the help that he needed. With this, we were able to help him get a job, help him keep his job, get a home for him, get him a bike so he has transportation. And this, don't let anyone ever tell you that that's a handout. That is a hand up. And I got in primarily around healthcare because of this race. But what we're seeing now is just absurd. We have a system right now that does not work for the American people. What we have seen from a government that watches rioters storm the Capitol, maim and kill law enforcement officers and then they get handed presidential pardons. We see a government that denies care to people. We see a government that doesn't have our best interests at heart. Because we see that same government now going after protesters in our neighborhoods, and instead of engaging with dialogue, instead they decided to respond with tear gas, batons, and bullets. What we see from Congress is absolutely nothing. They have been not able to do anything because of the state of dysfunction. Chuck Edwards is part of that dysfunction. Hello? I thought maybe you cut me off. Maybe I went on a little bit too long. And so what we see, excuse me. They have been unable to even muster their votes to stop insider stock trading within the government. Unable to do that. With that said, this is not competency. This is not morality, and this is not democracy. What we need is something different in Congress. And we have a question. And we know the answer, and that question is, can we get out of this? Can we move forward and remove ourselves from this darkness? We know we can. So really the question is, are we going to make the choice to do that? And that choice is yours, and that choice comes down to this election. Who do you see as the best candidate who has a proven track record, who has life experiences, and who has the right mindset in order to get this country working again, going to Congress, and doing what we need to do? I look forward to your time here with your questions. Thank you so much.
It's great to be here. And as I was driving here, I was reminded there's a Joe Irvin house just down the road here. Joe Irvin was a Methodist minister who helped found this camp, I believe. And he married my parents back in the early 60s before my dad was deployed to Vietnam. And he was Papa Joe to me. And it's just I thank you for bringing me back here. So I'm Paul Maddox. I am a hillbilly scientist. I come to you from Yancey County. There's a graphic on the wall there. Thank you, Lou, for the graphic. And Yancey County is up there to the sort of, it's a darker blue one to the right. And it's not unlike Clay County. It's very rural. It's very mountainous. There's one town called Burnsville. If you say you're from Yancey County, almost nobody's from Burnsville, but you just say Burnsville because people know that. You say, I'm from Locust Creek, or I'm from 80 North, or I'm from 80 South. This is, it's very simple, but really hard-working, hard-living people. And my mom's family been there since before Yancey County was a county, and that, going back probably before the Civil War. And my grandparents, my papa and my granny, they didn't go to high school, but my granny could take you out in the forest and show you 10 things that'll keep you alive. And she was a smarter person than I've ever met. I'm a professor at UNC Chapel Hill, and the only thing bad I'd ever say about Papa Joe is that he was a Duke fan, so I'll forgive him. But I'm a self-biologist, and I solve things. That's what I do for a living. I innovate things. I started 2 companies. I have patents. I've formed things out of nothing, and I believe that government we need innovation in government now. We need to move forward to make this country a place where people can succeed. And that means a place where children can get a good education, a place where healthcare is not only accessible. I mean, what does accessible mean? It's also navigable. You don't have to have a doctorate to go through the webpage to get your healthcare. And these are sort of foundational things to help all of us be the best of us, be the best who we can be. Okay, that's what we need, and that's what I'm here to fight for. And I will do it in innovative ways. That's what I do. I solve problems, and I hope to solve your problems. Thank you.
Well, I want to thank you for coming out, showing the interest that we really need to energize the Democratic Party in this election. I just want to say I went down into Hayesville and I ate at the Fat Dog's place. I don't know if you guys know that. I saw the Yellow Jacket by the high school, and I said, "Well, I'm a Georgia Tech Yellow Jacket." So I was proud to. With my leadership and my ideas, we can make the tide turn in Washington. Okay. My name is Lee Whipple. I'm a licensed civil engineer. That means that I permit plans with the city, the state, and federal agencies. I have to go through really complicated regulations to make sure my projects get approved. I have to work with contracts and budgets and construction sequences. I have experience in all those areas, and it makes me the most qualified candidate to represent District 11. We need to open doors. We need to open doors for our younger generations to have affordable housing, to have a living wage. We need to open doors for we need to open doors for healthcare, like Richard was saying. We need the best healthcare, but it has to be at an affordable cost. We need to open doors for free childcare. We can do that. We need to open doors for our Social Security system so it's viable for all of our future generations. It's going to take hard work, but I can be your candidate for that, and I will represent you in North Carolina District 11 with your help and support. Thank you very much.
All right, just a brief 2 minutes answers. Wendy is going to be showing you the way as time allows. 1 minute, whoa. And we'll start on this end. So let's get to it. First question is, as a citizen of Western North Carolina, what are your highest top 3 priorities for this part of the state? As a citizen.
I guess we got to share this now. So I'm, as a citizen, citizenship means a lot to me here. I really believe that we're going to run a campaign here that's a place over politics campaign, and this word citizenship and the word representative that represents this whole region for Western North Carolina, and that means everybody, not just people that vote for me. We have so many unique characteristics, and I was talking to some folks, and I said, this is the most beautiful part of the country. And there was one guy that challenged me over in the Rocky Mountains, but I said, you might have a challenge, but I'm not sure you do, come on. And so, but for this campaign as a citizen, what we need to recover from, especially in our part of the state, over in West, in Asheville, Buncombe County, Haywood County, Yancey County, that whole area got hit really, really hard by Hurricane Helene in September 27th, 2024. We lost friends and neighbors, and it was devastating for so many folks around the region. And our current representative in Washington has completely failed us on 2 fronts. Well, number 1, getting us the money. We haven't gotten the money. And number 2, he wasn't available for folks. When tragedies happen, part of leadership is showing up for people in the community. So that's number one. Number two, the cost of living is way too high for so many folks throughout our region. Healthcare, we got housing, we got childcare, we got all the things Lee mentioned, to me are terrifically high. And so many folks, when the fundamentals of the economy look good at the top, but people are having a hard time making ends meet, something works. The third thing we got to focus on right now is our trust in government. It's at an all-time low, and to me, I've got 3 boys. They're 21, 18, and 16, and it's kind of normal to be cynical at that age, but we can't have folks that don't believe that our system of government functions well, and we've got to do a number of things like ban stock trading. We've got to fix Citizens United. We've got to make sure that the folks, when they are done, are not. Thank you.
Number one, affordability. Number two, the lack of rural healthcare and clinics in this area. And number three was education. My focus is going to be on those 3 until y'all tell me if there's something else. Because my job as a civil servant is to listen and advocate for the people of Western North Carolina, especially the people in the rural area that are so often ignored. Y'all don't deserve that. You deserve better. So, to repeat, affordability, healthcare, education. Thank you.
Isn't it quaint to think of a time where we only had 3 problems we needed to solve?
Those were big ones.
I mean, there are big ones, and we got a whole lot of big ones too. Clearly, we're not likely to differ on many of these issues, right? Affordability and healthcare is certainly a part of that. What I've done in healthcare, what I've seen in healthcare, this country spends more than twice the amount of money that any other country spends per capita, and we have worse outcomes. We don't need more money. We need people who have lived it, who've seen patients, to help fix the system. And I think the moment is now for us to get that done, because everyone sees that. Number 2, I'm going to put these 2 together because I think they are generational obligations that we are failing with. One is, as Zelda said, is education, and the other is the environment. We see a beautiful place out here. We need to make sure that when we pass this beautiful country off to the next generation, that it's left in a better place than where we started. And it's the same with education. We have an obligation to make sure that our kids have the best and most possible educational environment possible, right? And third, I would also then chime in with what Jamie said. What I've heard across in many parts of our state is that Hurricane Helene, in many parts of Western North Carolina, Hurricane Helene, we have still not seen what we needed to do. Chuck Edwards sits on the powerful House Appropriations Committee, said he was friends with Trump. He was going to get us money to help us do that, bring jobs back, bring back economy here. Well, he hasn't done that. With friends like that, who needs enemies in Congress? It's time to boot Chuck, and it's time for us to get things done again in Congress. Thank you.
So, Richard's right. We don't disagree on many things here. I think in this room we kumbaya about education and healthcare and affordability till the cows come home. Jamie's cows. And but these are all really critical things, and so I'm gonna throw a new one in there, and I think this one is something that we really need to pay attention to, and that's artificial intelligence. And I have worked with artificial intelligence as a scientist since the 90s in some form or another, and it was we use it for solving problems. Artificial intelligence is really good at analyzing images of cells. It is. And so, thank you. But it's also very good at doing bad things. And so we need regulation, not just of the morality of artificial intelligence, but also the data farms that are going up in counties here in Western North Carolina. We need to, they need to put energy back into the grid that they're taking out, and put in environmental safeguards because they use water and energy. And we need to profit from that. There are ways we can do things like that. Looking forward. Thank you.
Yeah, as a citizen of North Carolina, my top priority is Hurricane Helene. And as a civil engineer, I've already talked to people from my job about, we were replacing bridges for people, and there's a federal program that's taken care of, and it helps pay people back for the bridges that they put in. So we found a federal program to help people with the cost of those bridges. There's also the problem, like people are saying, is we're not seeing any money from the government as much. FEMA is not giving us the money, and that's Michael Watley is the guy who was assigned to take care of that situation, and he hasn't even been out to Western North Carolina at all. And I'm starting to wonder, it's $1.6 billion that he's supposed to use to take care of the reconstruction and refinancing of people's homes, and he just hasn't used any of it at all. So I'm starting to wonder if he sort of, just ran away with the money. I mean, he's Donald Trump's special appointment, so you don't know. So these are the things we have to keep track of. Also, I feel like a living wage is also really important. Maybe we could sort of stage it in so it doesn't shock small businesses too much. But you talk about inflation is not going to go away. I know some of you have seen this over the years that prices just go up. Prices never go down unless there's some kind of economic cataclysm, and we don't want that. So prices just go up. We need wages that match the price of goods. And then my final thing, I guess, just me personally, I see what's going on in Minneapolis, and we have to do something about that. Not have a, not interdiction, but,
Insurrection.
yeah.
Thank you. Now put your representative cap on and think what your most important accomplishment you would like to see done as a representative in the House of Congress. What's your most important thing? How would you go about it as a representative to get that important thing done? What would be your first steps? So,
I guess I go first, right?
no, we got Ms. Barlow.
Okay, good. Got it.
First thing I would focus in on is affordability. Let's look at some of the statistics here. If you paid $1 in federal income taxes, you paid more than Tesla in 2022 and 2024, AT&T in 2021, Nike in 2020, Dish Network in 2020, Amazon in 2017 and 2018, and Jeff Bezos in 2007 and 2011. And I name all of this because the burden of taxes falls heavily on the working class, while billionaires feast and we are given crumbs. I want to close tax loopholes for the wealthy. I want to reduce taxes for the working class families and actually tax the rich. So the example I can give you in regards to that, lowering taxes for households that make less than $1 million a year, thank you, while increasing taxes for billionaires and corporations, which will ultimately yield in more money. I will also hold corporations criminally liable for price gouging and federal minimum wage. When I first started campaigning, people were asking for 15, 17. I'm happy to say we're at 20. Over in Buncombe County, livable wage is now $24.10. Personally, I do think that we need to be higher than that, but that takes time. So, to recap, hold corporations accountable, reduce taxes on the working class while increasing taxes for the ultra wealthy, and raising the federal minimum wage. Thank you.
I'm a physician. I guess it's going to be hard for you to guess what my number one priority is going to be. It's going to be healthcare, folks. We are at a juncture right now that we need to make some decisions about healthcare, and I think it is at this moment in time, this is the time to do it. We know when President Obama got the Affordable Care Act through, he wanted to do some other things. He wanted to get a public option. He wanted to reduce the cost of medications and have the government negotiate drug prices. He wasn't able to do that. We've got a little bit of that now. What we've seen, though, is that the reduced subsidies in the Affordable Care Act, the threats to Medicare, the threats to Medicaid in this state are going to hamper our ability to do really the other things that need to be happening. Again, as I mentioned, we spend twice as much. Our healthcare system is a $5 trillion healthcare system, and we are spending twice as much as other countries do. And our outcomes are worse. When you look at longevity, we're 48th, and yet we spend twice as much money. There are lots of ways to do this. There are 4 basic healthcare systems that other countries use, right? The difference is they have chosen which one to use, whether it's Canada, which is like Medicare, whether it's the UK, which is like the VA, or Germany, private insurance. What we've done is we've made a hodgepodge mess of doing a little bit of each of these. It is time for us to pick a healthcare system for this country and make sure everyone has guaranteed healthcare coverage in this country.
I think opportunity. When I think of America, I think the land of opportunity, and I believe that is a fundamental right. It's the drive that makes Americans who we are, and the right to have an opportunity to really be the best person that you can be. And I believe that starts with education. I'm an educator. My mother was a 4th grade teacher. In 4th grade in North Carolina, you learn about North Carolina, right? So what's our state bird, right? Cardinal. Everybody knows all these things, right? So these are, but this opportunity to be somebody, to be something, and to do it here in the most beautiful place in the world, James, right? Western North Carolina. And so people, you don't have to leave to be a cell biologist like I am. You don't have to go abroad to study architecture or something. We can do all these things here in Western North Carolina, create opportunity for the citizens here. And I believe that is what I really want to achieve, is to make Western North Carolina the sort of birthplace of innovation. We are the cradle of forestry. The science of forestry started here in Western North Carolina. We can do things like that. We have in the past, we will in the future.
Look, I'm going to Congress to try to bring all my new ideas to Congress. And I just want to show you, I put them on my computer. It's a book of new ideas. You can see them. These are all single space type ideas. I want to make connections in Congress so that when a bill comes up that I have ideas for, my ideas will get heard. And for instance, on a minimum wage, yeah, we need a federal minimum wage, but it can't just be a blanket minimum wage for the whole country. My idea is to have a wage based on the ratio of the state's electoral votes to the total vote count of electoral votes in the country. So I have a small spreadsheet here. You guys want to start passing that around, pass it back, check it out. You can change the yellow cells in there and it will change the minimum wage. You can make it come out the way you like. But it also, we need to worry about the debt. That's one of my main fears is this massive debt that we have in this country that seems like, I mean, people are just like, well, it's impossible to fix, so we might as well do nothing. I don't feel that way about the debt. What I feel is a very drawn out process, but we need to have the rich companies and billionaires declare their wealth. We need to tax them a one-time wealth tax, like an amendment to the Constitution, a one-time wealth tax only, and that will cover the debt. And then we will save our payment on bonds, the interest on bonds is going to be $1 trillion this year. That's $1 trillion that could go to the budget that we can use to spend on the citizens of Western North Carolina and the rest of the country. So the final part of that in the amendment, you have to say, we're just not going to issue bonds anymore. We're not going to borrow any money because we're really bad at it, and our politicians use it to serve themselves. So thank you.
Oh, Jamie.
Okay, so, good question. I think, the first thing I would do, now it's time to go, we're in Washington, it's time to go execute. As somebody in Western North Carolina that's been doing business here in Western North Carolina for 25 years, I've been doing business with people across the aisle, on both sides of the aisle, and I know how to build relationships across all those places and work with other people to get those things done. So the first thing we do is go up there and figure out who the heck we gotta talk to cut the red tape to get money flowing for Hurricane Helene. For whatever reason, Chuck Edwards has totally failed us on that job. And to me, as an entrepreneur, I can go out there. I'm not scared to go talk to somebody. Who do I got to talk to? What do I got to do to make sure this thing happens? So that's the first thing we see happen. The second thing is, I feel like with healthcare, we've got sort of a house on fire scenario, and we've got the long-term structural problem to fix. The house on fire scenario is everybody's premiums just jump 20-30% in January, and that's killing so many families that I talk to. And to me, we've got to extend those ACA subsidies. They're not ideal, but they're a solve for the short term until we do the hard work of building what comprehensive healthcare looks like. The other thing is we've got to get immigration reform fixed too, because that's another piece of that. For housing, we've got to get more houses, all that stuff. There's got to be ways we can do those things. We've got to, and the third thing I'd say is, from a practical standpoint, we're looking at to fix the trust in government. We can ban stock trading by members of Congress. There's like 80% bipartisan agreement that needs to happen. We can go do things like that, really low-hanging fruit. Make sure people are not just hanging around in Congress forever as a retirement strategy and not serving their communities, but doing these things. And to me, passing simple laws that are bipartisan, that are real opportunities is very, very doable in that way. And the third thing I'd say is that we can inspire trust in our government, and by the end of say 2 years, that we see the metric that our trust in government is increasing, not decreasing, and that's good work.
It is a house on fire moment because the question keeps coming back, healthcare. And in Western North Carolina, it's a real problem. What changes would you support to strengthen the healthcare services that we have in Western North Carolina, especially primary, emergency care, and mental health access?
Thank you. So as I mentioned in my introduction, in addition to being a physician, I was also the CEO of Western North Carolina's largest community health center, Blue Ridge Health. We expanded care. We're in 9 rural counties in Western North Carolina. We have an integrated service of primary care, mental health, dental care, reduction or low-cost medications, school-based health centers. We do dentistry, including school-based health dentistry. We have school-based health centers. We have a model already in place. We just need to continue supporting that. Our ability, we did it as rapidly as we could to expand out to 9 counties. We, in the past
10 years under my leadership, as I said, we quadrupled the number of patients that we're taking care of, we quadrupled the number of clinic sites, we quadrupled the number of providers who are providing care now in Western North Carolina. Yes, we didn't get out this far west, but we're out in Swain County, we're out in Macon County. These are the things that we can do. These are not, it is tried and true healthcare for rural North Carolina. What we've seen from Congress and from Chuck Edwards is he's cut $50 billion for rural healthcare. We're going to see cuts to our hospitals. We're going to see fewer nurses in our hospitals, and we may even see some more hospital closures here in rural Western North Carolina. That is unacceptable. We can fix that. We also really honestly need to look, as I said, on a one-system form of healthcare for our citizens. The last thing I will say is I'm a primary care person, all right? And what we need to do is make sure that we invest in primary care. Other countries who do this and spend 15% of their healthcare income on primary care have better outcomes. For us, we're less than 5%. Less than 5%. Those are my solutions. Thank you.
My father was a family physician, Richard, in Asheville from the mid-70s until he retired, 2014 or something like that. He served rural counties around Western North Carolina. I used to go with him to on house calls in Madison County and in Haywood County, different places that and people wanted to pay him with wood carvings and things like that, and he was just like, every now and then he'd like, okay, I'll take a wood carving, and but people need healthcare is not something that we should be sort of scrimping and saving for. It should be a right, and I believe that we should do everything in our power to make sure that everybody has access to health care. And my brother has schizophrenia, and so I've lived with mental health sort of issues, if you will, for my entire life, and I've seen the care he's gotten. And in order to keep his doctor, he had to go now from he can't keep his doctor in Yancey County. He had to go to Buncombe County. That's unacceptable to me. I mean, he should be able to have mental health care of his choosing in his home county. And lastly, there's a health clinic 5 miles downriver from where my mother lives, where I live, and that is in danger of disappearing. And that means my mother will have to go to Spruce Pine, which is 45 minutes away, or then to Asheville, which is an hour away. And these things are just, what are we thinking here? We're not helping people. We're not creating an environment where people can really excel. Thank you.
I'm fully in support of a Medicare for all system. Thank you. But the problem is our health insurance companies are now so bloated and intertwined, and there's a lot of employees in healthcare insurance companies, and we can't just suddenly institute a program that will replace everything. There'll be still Medicare Advantage plans, Medigap plans, but we need to sort of phase in, have the insurance companies trim the things that they need to trim, and slowly move towards the Medicare for All program. And also some of the practices that insurance companies are doing. Am I getting feedback from this mic? I think thank you. I think some of the practices that the health insurance companies do, sort of like in a loud amount. You've seen this on your bill. I don't understand how doctors and hospitals can make it when insurance companies are paying next to nothing for the treatment. And things like, I saw things like referrals. I worked with people who were, I was relating what their benefits were, and people would call me and say, get reimbursed for this treatment that I underwent on a specialist. And I'd have to say, oh, well, you didn't get a referral, it looks like. Just some kind of technical thing that they had to do they didn't know about, and suddenly they have no coverage. So we should definitely reform things like that, but eventually we do have to move to a Medicare for all system. Thank you.
Thanks for sharing that story about your dad, Paul. My uncle was also a doctor, and I remember going to their house many times and eating venison for dinner from a patient. And we'd give him venison instead of payment. And medical, I think health care is definitely the issue that is swamping so many people. And like I said before, the house on fire scenario where we've got to shore up these rural hospitals all over Western North Carolina and make sure that they're not going to go out of business, because getting them back into business once they're out of business is bad. Is really the hard work. Second thing we've got to do is that these premiums just spike on everybody, and we've got to fix that in the short term. And to me, those are just two really, really important things we can do, and then we have to make politically doable. And so to me, the sort of whole structure of solving healthcare is going to take a ton of really, really important leadership. And to me, that's one of the most, as an American, one of the reasons that I decided to run for this seat is because I care about our country, and I'm a patriot, and I think that America does great things. And for us not to be able to solve an issue like healthcare for our citizens is unpatriotic. And so we've got to find ways to solve big, hard problems together with each other. And I think we all know what winning looks like in healthcare. And what does winning look like? Is when people have a good primary care doctor that they know and trust, that doesn't break them. We know that when bankruptcy is not the number one cause, or healthcare is not the number one cause of bankruptcy in this country, we know that's called winning. We know that people don't have to travel hours to get to their healthcare facility and to get help. We know we can address mental health well. I've lost family members due to mental health stuff, and it's very personal for me. And I know Ron Beam over here in Macon County, who's doing some stuff over there, so he was telling me all about some of that stuff as well. But, just making sure that we have hieroglyphics aren't the way we read healthcare bills. It's actually readable and understandable. So transparency in the system.
From a public health perspective, lack of insurance is the primary barrier to people accessing healthcare. And if we think about it, healthcare insurance doesn't actually provide us anything. It doesn't expand coverage, it doesn't reduce costs, and it doesn't expedite care. It simply exists for profit. And call me crazy, there are certain things that should not be profitable off of. People living is not something people should be making a profit off of. Plain and simple. What I have been doing is a systematic review and meta-analysis of multiple universal health care systems across the world, because 69% of the global population already has access to universal health care. We don't have to reinvent the wheel here. I'm going through and I'm looking at the different systems that we have to try and figure out what does work, what wouldn't work. And I'm going to bring that information to Congress and work with constituents as well as colleagues in order to bring a viable solution for universal health care for our country and for our people. And on top of that, I will ban for-profit health care. Thank you.
Next question. Do you believe climate change is a real threat to our global health? If yes, what steps would you support to lessen the impact on Western North Carolina? And if no, on what do you base your belief?
Well, I think these questions must have been set up in order to ask Richard about healthcare and me, a scientist, about climate change. Of course, I believe climate change is real. I think the evidence is palatable, right? I mean, just because, so we got caught in a little bit of a trap by calling it global warming, and we need to recognize that it's climate change, which changes weather patterns, and there are really, really interesting and complex weather models that are out there, and I'm a bit of a nerd about some of these things because they're really interesting. And if you grew up in Western North Carolina, well, you are a nerd, weather nerd. I guarantee you are. And so there's real evidence, and there are things we can do to combat that climate change. And one of the things we need to do is legislate sanctions against countries who are the real polluters in the world. The United States is way less of a polluter than we used to be. We were good, but we're way better now. And Europe is way better, but Asia and some of Africa and South America, these people are really, really affecting the climate right now. And we need to have sanctions to stop them from deforestation and just filling our skies with coal ash. So that's what I would do. I could talk for hours about that, but I won't.
Yes, I'm going to say that climate change is real and that it's man-made to the greatest extent. What I am going to say also is that our modern man has been burning things for 40,000 years, and it's probably not going to stop anytime soon. So we need to address the wealth gap, where people who get hurt by climate change, at least in America to start off with, are helped by given help from their disaster storms and things. One of the ideas I had was if there's rural communities that you know out here that people need jobs. People may even own their homes, or they may be okay, but they need jobs. And I'm saying that if there's a disaster, if there's disasters all over the country right now, we need a federal program where people can work 3 months on and 3 months off in construction, so that they can be free travel, they can be sent to a disaster area to help with construction, and have free room and board out there, and then come back to their community, and they can help the economy there with the money that they made. And that's just one idea I have for promoting jobs in rural communities. I'd also like to say one thing going back to healthcare. I think the quickest way to help with healthcare in rural communities are those mobile doctor vans or things. I've seen news programs on them, and they have dentists too. And it's not an ideal solution for the long term, but for the short term, it can really help out with things. If you can send these vans out to people to help them with their health problems. When you see effects like Hurricane Helene in Western North Carolina, I mean, you know that climate change is real, and people have been through it, and we need to find a way to help the people that are affected.
So I live on a Hickory Nut Gap farm, and we practice a lot of what's called regenerative agriculture, and that means we practice with our cattle. We rotationally graze the animals around, and when you let the grass grow up big, thick, and deep, and you graze them off with animals, when that grass is growing, it's taking carbon in, and then when you graze it off, all those roots die back under the soil, and you're building organic matter. And organic matter is ultimately carbon in your soil, doing the work of soil water capacity, doing all that stuff. There's other things we can do in agriculture, like cover cropping, things like that. And some of this stuff is starting to become more and more well-known in the region. So climate change, to answer the question, yes, climate change is real. It is, I think it's tricky whenever we've looked at solving this problem sort of from like a global level down. And I think there's we've never had, as humanity, never had a problem that involved the entire globe to the degree that climate change does. And trying to solve this problem from sort of a global, economic order or something feels unsuccessful and challenging to me from a political standpoint. And so we do have to be very practical about how we can do things on both, making sure we create rules and everything, but also on the ground as farmers every day and as consumers, buying products that actually can help solve this problem. And the other thing I'll talk about is just energy broadly. The key to a good, successful energy policy is an all-of-the-above approach, and that includes, solar, wind, that includes, everything that we can help solve climate change by not burning up so much stuff to fill the air with carbon, but also be able to diversify our energy sources and be a stronger country because we have a diverse energy supply.
We do not just simply inherit the earth from our ancestors. We borrow it from our children. And every single one of us is going to have to look our children and our grandchildren in the eye and justify why we didn't do anything. At the end of the day, climate change is an absolute fact. At the end of the day, 70% of all pollution comes from corporations. When we do not regulate businesses and give them free rein to do whatever they want to our land, all of us suffer. We can look at data centers for AI. Who do you think is paying for the massive amounts of water and electricity that's involved with that? We are. Even if those data centers fail, Duke Energy can still charge you for it. Absolutely ridiculous. We also have an issue with Helene recovery. NC has requested 48% of the damages from Helene get covered. Out of 60 billion damages, we're looking at about 8% covered by the federal government. So what I will do when I get to Congress, I will work with Josh Stein, Jeff Jackson, and future Senator Roy Cooper to bring a statistically accurate proposal to the House Appropriations Committee and get us the money that we deserve. I will prioritize investments in climate-resilient infrastructure, which will bring tens of thousands of jobs with renewable energy that cannot be outsourced or given on over to AI. And the last one, I will lead an audit of FEMA. And I will evaluate that entire department, figure out where the bureaucracy is, cut through the red tape, and get us our money. Thank you.
(2026). We're still asking the question: is climate change real? That's the basic problem right there. Yes, climate change is real. We've experienced that here in Western North Carolina. Wildfires in California, more hurricanes in Florida, tragic events across the globe. What we need is a sustained effort to actually make improvements, right? And that requires us to make some cultural changes and some educational changes around what we need to do. We had moved in a better direction where we were investing in diversifying our energy sources, getting away from oil and gas, and now all we see is drill, baby, drill, right? It's all about Venezuela and it's all about oil. We need to make these investments. It's challenging, though, because we have nearly a $40 trillion debt that we need to worry about. And that is the shoulder, that is the burden we are putting our kids through, right? How are we going to do all of these things? So that sustained effort. I want to say that the environment has been extremely important to my family. My wife, who's here, she was an environmental educator, taught second grade. That was her. Both of my kids graduated from Chapel Hill in environmental science. One of them is a research oceanographer. He is looking for answers. How can we use the oceans to figure out how to deal with things like methane? Maybe from Jamie's cows, the methane that's coming from. Using the oceans, how do they deal with it? And yet, his research has been defunded. These are the investments that we need to make for our children, for the next generation, because that's our obligation. And you asked the question earlier, what are the top 3 things? No one said the environment. It is so important to us. We cannot live on this earth without appropriate health. The other thing about the environment from a healthcare perspective is one last thing, is that you are going to see emerging diseases, infectious diseases around it. I went to West Africa to deal with Ebola, and that's about what's happening because of the environment. So other things to be concerned about with this climate change. Thank you.
Did you, yeah,
I'm first, right?
yeah, but let me give you a question. We like eager, we like that. Western North Carolina is blessed with natural beauty, but this healthy environment is showing signs of stress with growing threats to our water and air quality. What measures would you support to protect these parts of Western North Carolina, not only to the daily threats, but to the impacts of extreme storms like Hurricane Helene? Yes, sir, now.
Well, one of the big drivers of Western North Carolina's economy is tourism, people enjoying our national forests and our hiking trails, biking trails. You only have to look at Haiti to see what happens if you just cut down every tree and think everything's going to be all right. We need to carefully manage our forestry and our farming. I wish I could explain that in 2 minutes. But, there should be a program where we don't cut down any existing trees. If you want to cut down trees, you have to grow them yourself. And if you need to phase that in over 15, 20 years, we need to do it. Because there's no reason that we need to go cutting down trees for whatever construction and whatever use you need, making wood pellets to burn. There's no reason for it. And I was a little disappointed about the recovery. I guess there was really no time for it, but they basically took all the wood that they had to remove from roads and from forests. They had to chop that up all into wood chips and put it in landfills, is what happened in Western North Carolina. And I feel that at least it should have been split and stacked somewhere so that we could use it at some future date. But the increase in storms, hopefully we'll never see another Hurricane Helene again, God willing. But, just all around the country we see increasing storms. And I guess I'd like to say about climate change, I'm definitely in favor of solar and wind and all those things. I know about them in some degrees from my civil engineering experience, but it's something that we just have to implement as best we can and understand that we still need oil for our national defense. And if we keep these oil plants ready to use, even if they're decommissioned, we can have them in case there's some kind of massive war.
Here. What you can see is blessed with natural beauty, but this health environment is showing signs of stress with growing threats to our water and air quality. Okay. What Lee said, which is very true, which is that a large part of Western North Carolina's tourism industry is built on our natural environment. Our rivers, our streams for fishing, rivers for whitewater rafting, stuff like that. We've got the Smokies. There's so many amazing parts of Western North Carolina that are, and I think we all feel deeply connected to this region and why we're here, because these things matter so much. As we look at, something like Hurricane Helene, that was not forecast, that damage and everything was just so terrifically hard on so many folks and traumatic. I think we're going to see more storms like this in the future if we don't do something about climate change, stuff like that. And so we're going to have to account for some of these things, build more resilient models, and as we build communities, making sure we're doing that. And ultimately, I know there's a data center going in down here somewhere nearby, and those things use a lot of water and consume a lot of energy. And to me, we have to make sure that it's not affecting the economics for the folks in those communities, because that expensive energy is very expensive. And Zelda said, paying for that through the people and Duke Energy being allowed to do that isn't okay. And making sure that those things don't kill all our water quality is absolutely terrible. So to me, the main job of a representative of a region is to promote that region, to represent that region. And as a representative of Western North Carolina, the issues that affect our environment are going to be top of mind, because that's who we are and that's what we care about as a region.
When I was in college, I was studying psychology, but in my sophomore year, I fell in love with outdoor recreation education to the point where I decided that I wanted to go to grad school to study adventure-based psychotherapy and adventure education. I fell in love with Western North Carolina when I fell in love with the Southeast. From the pink beds, all the way on over to horse pens in Alabama. I started 2020 on an outward bound course, sailing in the Florida Keys. And I get goosebumps thinking about it every single time, because I love our country. I love our environment. There is no other place in this world that is nearly as beautiful as the United States of America. And it provides such an opportunity for us to learn off of. So, when it comes to preserving our lands, I think that we need to make sure that we have ample funding towards our national parks and forests. I also think that we need to make sure that, y'all remember when 40 was completely collapsed on the way to Tennessee? Do you know what they did? They took stones from the river in Pisgah Forest rather than getting anything from the 16 different quarries that we have. Once again, we are borrowing this land from our kids. And if we don't take care of it responsibly, there will be consequences. We're already seeing it. The last thing I'll say in regards to this is, as of right now, 600-ish applications for FEMA's disaster mitigation program are sitting up in FEMA headquarters in Washington. 0 of them have been approved. Do you know what happens when that doesn't come down the pipeline? People are approached by private equity firms who will then buy that land and then use that land to how they see fit, including AI data centers. We take care of our people, not the corporations.
Protection of our natural resources, our water. There are no better answers than from us, right here in Western North Carolina. There is no one else who has more at stake for making sure that our water stays clean than us right here. What we need to do is to make sure that we have state laws and federal laws that protect us, of those living here, to make sure that our priorities are heard and met. Clean water, clean environment, there's nothing really more important. Without it, we will not exist on this earth. We need to make those fundamental investments. And that includes not only the investments to protect this environment, but also to make sure that we then reinvest also in our research capabilities. So we have a NOAA in Asheville, right? They have been destroyed in terms of the folks that are there. We need to use science in order to figure out where we need to go. We need to use our public-private power in order to make sure that corporations can't come in here, whether it's Duke Energy or any other one, that takes priority over what we want, whether they're data centers, etc. We need to make sure that we have local control, because we are the best folks that have the answers to make sure that we protect our environment.
We can't win this election with just Democrats alone. You all know that. The environment is a place where we have a real opportunity to reach independent voters and a little bit across the aisle. My cousin, who I grew up with, he grew up in Fairview. He is he's a right-leaning moderate. I'm a left-leaning moderate. We both like to go fishing. We both like to have a beer every now and then. And we sit down and we have a chat about, things. And he cares more about the environment than anybody I've ever met. And so he is a model of how we win this election. We reach across and implore independent voters that if we don't act together to save what we have, we're not going to have it to pass on to teach our grandkids how to fly fish in a small mountain stream and catch a 10-inch trout. And, these are luxuries which we have, which we need to preserve. And we can do it, but we need to win this election. And we can use issues like this to do that. I think we can all agree on that.
What changes would you support to strengthen access to the health care? I already asked that. I didn't. Sorry. I was sitting there trying to remember what I missed, and it's my follow-up question, which would be, would you support women's access to birth control, including abortion, as part of Medicaid insurance?
Good question. I'm first here. Yeah, women's access to health care, to birth control is certainly an issue that is at threat right now with the current administration and all of the conservative justices we have on the Supreme Court and places like that. And that's a real issue for women all over this country and also right here in Western North Carolina. And to me, that issue is obviously not best solved by a bunch of white men up in Washington, D.C., but solved between the doctor and the patient. And I have a lot of humility in this context, because clearly this is an issue that would ever impact me, and I feel like to have the ability to want to control that outcome is full of misunderstanding on my part. Now, what I will say is, we need to make life good for young people, so we need strong programs like Medicaid. Once people are around, we have to do everything we can to celebrate and promote a great life once we're here. And to me, that's something that we 100% can lean into and make sure that folks, poor families that struggle have plenty of access to good health care, plenty of access to all the tools and the resources that are going to help people thrive. And so to me, that's the job of what we can do in government.
Abortion is healthcare. Healthcare is a human right. I absolutely stand for all aspects of family planning, and we should not be policing what other people can do with their bodies. Thank you.
Reproductive health care is health care. We need to support people to get the health care they need. And I've done that throughout my lifetime. What we've seen, what I've shared in the exam room with patients, I've seen folks that have been overjoyed by their pregnancy and others that have been scared by their pregnancy. I've seen miscarriages. I've seen lack of access to birth control. I've seen unplanned pregnancies. I've seen maternal deaths and even infant deaths. There is no one answer that solves all of these problems, and there isn't one answer that's going to make everyone happy. But through my time as a physician, there's always been an answer that was right for that woman and her family. And I was trained to help, not judge, and we need the tools to help with that. Birth control access to health care, for reproductive rights, 100% support. Thank you.
I have two teenage daughters, and a beautiful wife who, would, you know, I would never in a million years want someone to tell them that they couldn't make their own decision. And, cause I know if I try to tell my teenage daughter what to do, that's not going over so well, right? So, I'll share a quick anecdote. I was in a small store in Burnsville, and I was talking to a fellow named Doyle Blevins. It turns out our papaws worked together way back then. Anyway, he says, you know, well, I believe that, I believe in, you know, I don't think people should have abortions. I said, well, you want me to come up to your house and tell you what to have for supper? He said, well, no. I said, you want me to tell you how to build a fence? He said, well, no, you can't do that. And I said, well, you can't tell a woman what to do with her body. And he said, well, I guess you're right. And you know, I think we can all agree that we don't want to be told what to do, and we shouldn't. You know, we should. This isn't difficult. It's very simple. What Zelda says.
Yeah, we can all agree on this issue. It seems there's a time in the second trimester, about midway through the second trimester, when the child cannot survive without the mother. It will not survive, and that is the appropriate time to limit abortion. But in all other cases, a woman's choice is paramount. Now, I just wanted to sort of pivot a little bit, because you guys have been talking about data centers, whether they should be here, whether they should be there. I had an idea a long time that if there's a place that has a lot of drought, like Lake Mead or Lake Chad in Africa, we should just use the very expensive method of taking icebergs that have calved off into the ocean and break them up, put them on trains, and send them to Lake Chad or Lake Mead, and just dump the icebergs in the lake. There's some technicalities that you have to worry about. But after I had this idea, and everybody, well, that's too expensive to solve people's thirst, we got data centers that are using up all this energy and all this water. So if the data centers need this, look at this lake we have out here. What if some data center went out into a property where it was dry all around, and you told them, hey, you pay the cost of shipping these icebergs for all this water that you need. You can make a nice lake out here. People will have drinking water out here. And if you need all this power, you can pay people that can't afford to pay their power bills to help them with their power bills. And maybe even some of the people that, if you have money left over, pay for some of the people that normally pay their power bills, have their power bills be less. So data centers, if they can't pay for that, they're not sustainable. So thank you very much.
Describe your experience working with people with whom you have philosophical and political differences to reach compromise and get results.
Say that question again. I didn't understand what you were saying.
Okay. This is how responsive our Congress should be. Okay, I'm going to answer you. Describe your experience working with people with whom you have philosophical and political differences so that we can reach compromise and get results. Got it?
Yep.
Great, thank you.
During my time working over at Red Oak Recovery, which is over in Sandy Mush, I had the opportunity to work with a lot of young men, ages 18 to 35. In that time, I worked with a lot of people who had differing views from me. And when you're in healthcare, and recovery is healthcare, You are taught to leave your perspective, your biases, and your opinions at the door. You are there to provide a service and support someone, especially in their lowest lows. If I go in there telling them how they need to live their life, they're going to do the exact same thing that I did when I was going through active addiction and say, F you, I'm not listening to that. You have to be an active listener. You have to treat people with unconditional positive regard and approach them with curiosity. If you go in trying to convince them of something, you're already failing. I've worked with people who were murderers. I've worked with people who were gangbangers. I've worked with people who were proud boys. People who don't think that me, as a queer woman or as a biracial woman, should even exist. But if I can sit down and have a conversation with a father who's trying to see his daughter again, but still keeps falling into the trap of addiction, and have a conversation of what life looks like in recovery, despite the fact that this man was part of a white gang, I can have these conversations with people because you have to. It's part of the job. You leave bias aside. The job of a civil servant, especially someone that is going to Capitol Hill, is to advocate on behalf of the people and educate the people based off of what is happening. I see no issue doing that. It's my bread and butter.
In my healthcare career, I had to advocate for things that clearly I thought made sense and others didn't. You know, here in North Carolina, Western North Carolina, Chuck Edwards, he was in state legislature. I remember going literally 2, 3, 4 times a year to the state legislature and saying, when are we going to get Medicaid expansion? Got to the point where I was coming in the door and Chuck was like, Richard, we're not talking about Medicaid expansion. And I said, I'm sorry, we are going to talk about Medicaid expansion. Took 12 years, but he finally voted for it. So you may have philosophical differences, but eventually you have to keep at it in order to find the right time that makes sense for that person. If we hadn't kept after it, we might not even still have Medicaid expansion in the state. But it's also about finding that common ground, right? Whether it's around the environment, whether it's around education, whether it's around healthcare, you have to find that common ground and start at that place. There is a favorite quote of mine from a poet, and you heard this before. Between right and wrong, there is a field, and I'll meet you there. Their right is our wrong. Our right is their wrong. But there's a place that we can find compromise to get started, to build trust. Change happens at the speed of trust. You have to get trust with the people that you're representing, with the people that you may be working with in Congress, in order to begin to solve some of these problems that we have in this country. There are some days I don't even recognize where our country has gotten to because of this division that we're seeing. We need people who can understand how to work with others to find that opportunity and move forward. Thank you.
I'm a research scientist by training, hillbilly by choice or birth. In science, you have a hypothesis and you test the hypothesis. And the best day is when your hypothesis is wrong, because that means you don't know everything yet, and there's still stuff to get at. And so if you come in thinking that you're right and that's the only way it can be, you're going to be disappointed, because it could be lots of different ways, and it will be. And so you have to be accepting and actually embrace being wrong about something. And so if not, you're going to be frustrated and live a very unhappy life. So I think that's the key to bridging gaps, is to enter conversations with an open mind and be willing to stand in someone else's perspective and look at the problem from their point of view and say, you know what? I was wrong. You're right. And when you can say that, then you can make progress with building relationships and bringing people together. Thank you.
Sign. Sorry, I didn't mean to say that. Okay, start my 2 minutes now. So. Yes, it is very difficult to talk to MAGA Republicans right now. At this moment in time, I'll tell you a little story. But I want to talk to you. I tried to show you, like, flip through my ideas that I have. Not all of these are just crazy liberal ideas or crazy Democrat ideas. I've got a lot of ideas that appeal to conservatives too, and should appeal to liberals as well. I'm saying that there are places that both sides of the aisle can agree. But one of the things that's happening now is you can say something to a MAGA Republican and they just won't hear it. And especially about, I think that there's not a lot of people that can really lecture me necessarily on the way things happen in the Bible are. But I was talking to this woman, a very religious woman, and we were talking about this thing in the Bible that happened about how you should treat an injury necessarily. And it was all about kind of, well, if it's this way, or maybe we have to amputate. And I said, well, now we wouldn't do that. We'd go to a hospital. We'd use our medication system, our hospitals. And she said, yes, I suppose that some things in the Bible need to be seen in the light of current day, the way our current system is. And I was amazed talking to this religious woman, and she said she was sort of changing her view on the Bible, saying that it could be interpreted with the light of present day events. And then I tried to tell her something about Trump, and she was like, no, that's impossible. Trump could never be wrong about anything. And it was, I have to stop now, but yeah, that's right.
Get independence. We have to be reasoned with the independence.
I grew up in Fairview, Hickory Nut Gap Farm. I've been in agriculture my entire life. We work with a bunch of other farmers all over western North Carolina and up into Southwest Virginia, up into West Virginia, and also selling a lot of meat, right? So I've been in the meat business and I've been in agriculture for the past 20-some years. And then I started making phone calls when I decided to run for Congress to all my friends in those industries, so we didn't talk politics a whole lot. And it turns out most of them are Republicans. Can you believe that? And so what Richard said is true. Time moves at the speed of trust. You can make advancements at the speed of trust. And over the past 25 years, we've built a business working with folks across all political spectrums. And honestly, so many of my friends in those industries, good friends, are across the aisle and have donated to this campaign and believe in this campaign because they know me as a person. And when people know you as a person and trust you as a person, that's how you earn their trust and can solve hard problems together because these are tackled. And I think also what Paul said, humility. Many of the problems that we face in this country, nobody has all the right ideas. We all need to learn from each other. We all need to be curious. We all need to be learning from each other all the time. And to me, to think that we have all the solutions and know all the answers ends up being incorrect and doesn't help us actually solve those problems. So to me, I have a real track record of working with folks across the political spectrum. I admire lots of different ideas out there, and I think by earning people's trust and getting out there, I can go win this race, because math is tough, y'all. We all know this has not been won in many, many years, and so somebody that knows how to work across the aisle, somebody that knows how to earn trust of everybody in the community, is something I've done. Thanks.
Repeat again what you said about your Republican friends, and I didn't catch all of your points about that, but I'd like for you to talk about those kind of people and how we're gonna get them. You tell me.
So,
Okay.
should we do that after the last
We'll
question?
do that with open
Okay.
question time, if that's okay.
Very good.
Okay. If elected, what will you do to bring legal accountability to the Department of Homeland Security, in particular, ICE?
What we have seen in Minnesota really shakes us to our core, because it forces us to face the reality that what is happening in this national life of ours is seriously out of balance. We have an epidemic of violence, and that violence has touched our schools, touched our streets, touched our work, and we need to overcome what the great religions and ethical traditions have told us. Love thy neighbor. It's not hard. It's not rocket science. It's not cell biology. It's to love your neighbor. That's where we need to be. I put out a post on social media. I believe that we should actually begin impeachment of Christina. She has failed us as the Secretary of Homeland Security. We need to get ICE under control. I mean, when, again, and I said this earlier, when we see people storm the Capitol and they get presidential pardons, and then we see protesters in our neighborhoods and they get tear gassed and shot. Things are out of whack in this country. We must fix that. Begin holding people accountable for that. Number one. And that's going to start with Christina. Thank you.
I was in Asheville last Sunday, at an ICE demonstration in Pack Square, and I nearly froze. But there was a really great, energized group of people who simply want to exist. And so use of force in ways which is, so these people are clearly not very well trained. And so they don't know how to use the techniques, the technologies that are available to do the job, right? I think we can all agree that we don't want murderers and thieves from other countries or within our own country to be here. There's Obama was deporter in chief at some point. That was one of the monikers he had. We need to clean up our immigration. This is an obvious thing that needs to happen. Now, how to do that? It needs to be humane. We need to have pathways for people to get here in a reasonable way, and we, because we need immigrants. We are a country of immigrants. I mean, there's no denying that. So, but we need to do it humanely, and there's absolutely should be no case where someone is shot from the side in that kind of situation, which happened in Minnesota. I can't even, there's no words to describe that. So, but we need to fix immigration. It's clear. Thank you.
First, I'd like to say that I was at the protests as well for Renee Good, and yeah, it was a horrible tragedy. I think grassroots protests are often more organized and more effective, maybe than my friend here was saying. But I also want to say, if there's somebody that you need, actually, first in the spirit of Martin Luther King Jr., the protests must stay peaceful as long as possible. Because if Donald Trump is given an excuse to invoke the Insurrection Act, it's going to be a big, big problem for the United States of America. United we stand, divided we fall. And our country is so divided right now that our country is weak. But if you want someone to try to get rid of ICE, the first thing I was going to say is that it's obviously racist. This is a government agency that's using racist policies to sweep up people off the streets and throw them in the back of vans. It's very obvious. So the Supreme Court possibly could be a good reason, a good method of trying to get these ICE programs quashed, at least diminished. And then I'm saying, if you want someone who's willing to take on these issues head on, I've studied military strategies, small campaigns, large campaigns, special forces tactics. I'm a gun owner, and I support responsible gun use. There's a whole issue with that from the Constitution that I'd like to talk about. But I'm the guy. If you want someone who can understand, put themselves in their opponent's shoes, and know what to do at a moment's notice, and if things change, if the situation changes. So, okay, thank you.
What a tragedy to have a loss of life in Minnesota, and I think we all feel, can you hear me okay? But what a tragedy, the loss of life in Minnesota last week, and I think it really sort of is a moment of introspection as a country, and to see the rhetorical anger and the sort of incompetence in training these folks who we put a big responsibility on, and the total outcome of everything that we're seeing is just so unacceptable. And as a country, we have to do better. And to me, nobody that I know likes folks with masks on, with unmarked cars, roaming around neighborhoods, capturing folks that are our friends and our neighbors. And to me, this is where we have to do the hard work of reforming our, immigration system we have to have a system where we can actually bring folks in that contribute to our economy. We've had folks living here for 20 plus years now that are part of our communities, that we need to have some pathway to citizenship for these folks. And as Americans, like I said before, we have to be able to do great things. And I feel like the immigration issue has at its core been a political ping pong ball. That's been the priority is to keep the ping pong ball going for political purposes and not solve the problem for our country. And to me, that's 100% unacceptable and unpatriotic. And we need to, there's so many deep problems with this country, but get back together. We got to respect each other. We got to treat each other with respect. And our current administration fails to do that.
Matthew 25:35, and I say unto you, what you did to the least of them, you did to me. I agree with everyone here. We need to treat each other as human beings, not as someone who's less than because we had a different life experience. And what really terrifies me about the whole ICE thing right now is this isn't the first time we've had to deal with this in our country's history. We dealt with this during the Civil War. We dealt with this in World War II with Japanese internment camps. We racially profiled Vietnamese people. The list goes on. ICE is a means to an end that has been funded enough money that it rivals other military budgets from other companies. And let me make this incredibly clear. That money can easily go towards a viable immigration solution for America. My family, or my dad's side of the family, came over here from India back in 1972. Back then, as long as you had a job, you're coming on in. And you're good as a permanent resident so long as you have that job. And my father worked with the rest of my family and got their citizenship. And they are more American than a lot of people that I have met recently. But at the end of the day, we can't be doing purity tests on what it means to be an American or what it means to be a citizen. We are all Americans. We are all citizens. To answer the question, I believe that every single person, including Christy Nome, including everyone that is here in ICE, needs to be held criminally liable for the wrongs that they are doing. And we have to address the systemic issue of civil rights because it's being eroded upon. We need another round of the Civil Rights Act.
This concludes the prepared questions, so now we'll go to the audience. If you'll raise your hand, we're gonna start with you. Yeah, there you go. Okay.
Okay, now, by the way, do we have a reporter in this room? Okay, what I say don't apply to everybody else, okay? Just me, Aaron Martin.
Aaron, I forgot to say, if your question goes to specific.
I don't have a question, I'm just gonna comment.
Okay.
My experience, it'll take me 2 minutes, hold it. It'll just take me 2 minutes.
And in the future, it's questions.
All right, well, all right, let me tell you about rule, I don't hear, rural voters, we're losing them because they don't respect us. I know about rural voters. Bass Hite and I worked for the Farm Service Agency. I did 35 years all over North Carolina. I know rural people. And the way they have left, the working class people, they left us too. But rural people, because we're afraid, we don't have a spine. Now, this is all I'm going to say. I was Cherokee Party here in Clay County in 1976. We won the first local election since 1962. Jimmy Carter carried Clay County. Then in 1978, because vote buying went on in these mountains, we all know that. The Democrats in 78 said, we're not going to do it. We nearly got elected. I must have come on the radar of that sheriff because I became a federal employee with Farm Service Agency in 19... wait just a minute, I'm going to be through. Now, I mean it. They wrote the OIG in on me with 22 sworn affidavits accusing me of buying votes. It was a lie. Then, so I got away with that. Then they shot in my car, shot into my business, shot into my uncle's shoe shop in Hazel and some other Democrat business. 1982, we won. Then in 1983, I was subpoenaed to the grand jury, where Charles Brewer, the U.S. Attorney, explained what a target is. The target is somebody they're going to indict. He said, I'm going to indict you, because he claimed that Harriet Barner, Linda Patterson, and me suborned perjury over a certain woman. I've never talked to anybody.
Hey, sir, with all respect, you're trying to hijack this meeting. It's not.
All right, damn it.
Thank you.
Don't care.
Okay, do we have a question?
When you don't get the rule of vote.
Well, I got a question from Mr. Paul. You mentioned about, other countries do a lot of the polluting and stuff, which I agree. I've done a lot of research online. What would be because about 30% of our recycling goes to other countries, and they don't have the resources and the protection of the filters and stuff that goes in the air. So what would be your idea of how to solve those issues?
That's a great question, and thank you. I didn't get your name, I'm sorry? Kevin, thank you, Kevin. So we can put sanctions on these countries and have them say we have inspectors that go and inspect the plants, and then when they've had the filters on them, when they have the brushes in the smokestacks, then we can, and those things are made in America, we can profit from that from an economical point of view. And we can help clean up the emissions from other countries. Now, that's a difficult job because China's a very big place. And so, maybe we can use satellite imagery, artificial intelligence to figure out where these massive polluters are. And then we have the problem of deforestation like in South America. And so, that's an equally bad situation, right? We need to do both. And I'll finish up with one little quick story. One of my former students is in a startup company in San Francisco where he's engineering an algae to capture carbon out of the atmosphere and to make it into a little, for lack of a better word, turd, and drop it to the bottom of the ocean. And so it's as part of its life cycle, it sequesters carbon from the atmosphere. Now, this is the kind of innovation that we need to support to tackle that problem. Thank you, Kevin.
Any other questions? Laura?
I'm Laura. My question, as we talk about tourism and recreation and our beauty, we're totally messing with the national park system, our Department of Forestry, our Department of Health, Department of Energy. How are you gonna fix it, folks? We've crumbled these departments. We've got staff on gag orders. We've got narrative being changed in our history. We've got national park professionals cleaning toilets. How do you fix that?
This may rise, looks like we have to switch mics or something. So, anyway, how we're gonna fix that? We need a Congress that works again. We need a Congress that will hold people accountable. We need a Congress that will solve problems. We need a Congress that can take what is now a shambles of the federal government and create something more out of it. And we have an opportunity. This administration, what we see is all about destruction. Destruct, destroy, deflect, deny, move on. We have an opportunity with all of this destruction. We know they're not going to build it back because it's too hard. It's hard work. And they're not invested in hard work. They're just invested in whatever news cycle they're on. So we need a Congress to step up, take on their constitutional obligation, and start acting like Congress again.
We really leaned into this idea of purpose as part of our job, as part of our leadership, and communicating why what we do matters every single day to everybody throughout the organization. And so to me, it's funding, make sure you have enough money so people have the resources they need to be successful in their jobs. And it's also, number two, making sure that we as a country and we as employees of all those different entities that you mentioned understand and feel that the American people are grateful for them doing these roles. And, when I talk to my friends across the aisle, nobody that I talk to doesn't think we need a good National Park Service. These ideas that they actually, with the big, beautiful billionaire, the big, beautiful bill for billionaires is destroying so much of this stuff. And there's nobody out there that wants to see our institutions destroyed. They just want to see we can fix them. And so to me, there's a real opportunity here that we can go back and rebuild this country in a way that has a vision for the future as opposed to just reacting to the past.
Every single day, more and more fuel is added to the fire by this current administration. To the point where the conversations that I had 6 months ago with y'all during the Rally for the Constitution, a lot of the answers that I proposed, they had to be changed. because so much chaos is being instilled upon the American people every single day. How do we fix what was broken and what was taken? Even if we could, I don't think that we need to build back what was. We need to do better. We need to make sure that we have a government that is immune to what is happening right now.
Yes.
We need to have a government that has the interests of the people before any profits. When it comes to what we can do, in order to curb the amount of chaos and corruption and collusion that is happening, I think the first thing that we have to do is remove everyone from this administration and hold them criminally liable for what they have done to our country. And this is a brand new one. I hadn't even told Danielle about this one. I think we need 2 additional branches of government. I think we need one branch that oversees the nation's court systems. I think we need a branch that manages our civil service systems. And I think we need an entire branch that impeaches and censors officials, audits government agencies, a separate entity from all of the others, because we're not seeing 3 branches work right now, y'all. The corruption's still getting on through. By having 2 different branches, we are able to have individual third-party systems that are going to be helpful and hold everyone accountable, not just on party lines.
Well, the first thing we need to do is win. I mean, we have to have representation in Congress. I think I felt a little slighted, Jamie, with your we have an idea for everything comment. But I do have ideas that can be used in lots of situations. And one of my ideas is to help make Congress more respectable in the eyes of the public. Maybe we can make laws that are, first of all, not as long, but then have like a summary of what the law is. And if you go against the summary of the law, you're going against the entire text of the law. And I kind of call that the spirit of the law, sort of. You can make a paragraph or a couple of paragraphs. But we need to, I would love to get rid of the Trump administration, part and parcel of it all. But I just don't think that that's going to happen in the midterm election. We're not going to impeach Donald Trump unless we get, 66 senators for the Democratic Party. So it's not really a likely outcome. So we need to concentrate on what we can do and to make sure that our society doesn't slide off into some kind of civil war like people have already been talking about. We need to be very careful about what we do, what we can accomplish, and what we should be viewing as our goals, which is trying to get the American people in as much as we can entirely back on our side, which could be happening in Minneapolis right now. I think a lot of people see that that's not what's supposed to be going on. Thank you.
Karen Smith, Macon County. I don't need the microphone. I can yell really loud. Can y'all hear in the back?
No. You need the microphone.
So I'm asking about your concern for American workers, what you're willing to do, not what you're worried about. And are you willing to support labor unions for American workers so that they can organize and fight for that living wage that you're all talking about? That's my question.
I learned the other day that North Carolina SECU is the second largest credit union in the nation. It started with, I think, 17 people and $340, and it's a symbol of how we North Carolinians value our wages and our earnings. I think raising minimum wages to a living wage is a critical thing. Now, a living wage in Franklin might not be the same as it is in Asheville. But there has to be some sort of scale upon which we organize a living wage, and that should be legislated. Thank you. And I think we do that by so unions formed the SECU, right? It was a what do you call it? A collective bargaining, and that's an example of how a solution to a problem came about by people out of necessity. And there are other solutions that we can come to if we collective bargain these things with the people who are stakeholders in whatever it is they are, the industry which they're in. And I can't speak for a lot of industries, but I can help support them and give them resources that they need to move forward.
So I came out of a very blue city. I grew up and was born in Chicago. I had 3 siblings. They were all union workers. Carpenter, police officer, teacher. My wife is a teacher here in North Carolina. Believe me, I saw the difference between teachers that had unions and teachers that didn't have unions. Recently had to fill out an application for the AFL-CIO endorsement. It was a pretty easy form to fill out. Do you believe in this? Check. Do you believe in this? Check. Do you believe in this? Check. We need to do better by our workers. I tried to do that as CEO at Blue Ridge, clearly not unionized, but better wages, better time off, better health insurance, better retirement programs. And before I left, I had started actually instituting a 32-hour work week. That's not a 4-day work week of 10-hour days. That's actually working 32 hours, and that's full-time, and we're going to pay them the same amount of money that they were making doing 40 hours a week. We need to do better by our workers. You see, the workers are falling behind, and the middle class are falling behind in this country year by year. If you look at the trends, it started in 1980, and it keeps getting worse. That's my answer. Thank you.
One of the big things I say on this campaign is the Democratic Party has always and will always stand for working people. And that's our job as leaders in the party, is to make sure that's true. And when you see, we all fill out the same AFL-CIO questionnaire, and it was a pretty simple questionnaire to fill out. And certainly unions, the history of unions in this country has been to help working people fight for their rights and make sure that they get a fair shake at making it work. The idea Paul had there around a living wage for folks in different communities, and just making sure we understand, A, what that is, and B, how we get there for the businesses in those communities is good work and important. And the last thing I'll say is that our economy, I was talking to some economists the other day, like, the fundamentals of our economy are so good, yet people feel like it's not working for them. And to me, that's exactly because you can just see where the money has gone in this economy, and it's straight to the top and the wealthy. And we need to organize, and this tells me that our economy is organized incorrectly. We need to have an economy that works for everybody, not just the wealthy. And to me, that's ultimately good for business, that's good for our communities, that's good for everyday people. And so there's no question that this party is the party of working people. We need to reclaim that title and go show people that we can actually do this for them and pass laws that help make this happen.
The term redneck came from solidarity. It was showing your support for the unions back in the day. Labor organization brought us the weekend. Labor organization brought us OSHA. labor organization brought us the 40-day work week. And, food for thought, it was never supposed to be just 40. We were supposed to continue going down. Just as, minimum wage is supposed to go up, but something happened there. When I was at Our Voice in Buncombe County, I led our effort to unionize our workplace and practiced collective bargaining with the Teamsters. And I loved every second of it. And it was not because I had an issue with the leadership. We wanted to build off of that and show that even people who agree with what is going on organization-wise should still have a right to speak at the table. Because labor comes before capital. We are the reason why all of these corporations have money in the first place. When we think about it, I'll borrow an old quote. When the foreman takes the day off, no one notices. But when the coal workers take the day off, everyone goes cold. At the end of the day, collective bargaining rights is absolutely a human right. North Carolina and South Carolina are the only two states that 100% restrict federal workers from collective bargaining rights, and which is absolutely ridiculous. I stand with workers. I am working class. I would have loved the opportunity to be able to take, my entire time to campaigning. I didn't have that luxury. I still worked 40 hours every single week on top of the campaign trail, because that's what it means to be working class. You have to do all of it. Thank you.
I went to the same AFL-CIO interview that some of these guys may have done. Let me tell you something, that application was not easy to fill out. There was different subjects on every kind of union topic that you could think of, and I filled out a paragraph for every one of those. It ended up being 6 or 7 pages long. So they appreciated that. I got to the meeting, and they said, listen, we made questions for you. We wanted you to answer them. And so I did very well in that. I answered, I had a new idea for the teachers union. I had a new idea for the service industry union. And my grandmother was, on my mother's side, was a union organizer. And my idea for the unions now, which are kind of struggling right now, is you've got, I don't know, Walmart employees, Target employees, everybody make a minimum wage. So many service industry jobs, and they can't afford to pay union dues, or at least not any promise of a return. And we know that unions can help minimum wage workers, but they're just barely scraping by. They don't want to pay union dues when they don't see results right away. So my idea for the unions were, listen, why don't you void the dues when you first enter a union, you're trying to organize a union in a place, and then, then you'll have a lot of support. People say, okay, there's no dues, show us what you can do, and when you get a 50-cent raise for them over 2,000 hours a year, that's $1,000. They can pay union dues back. So I'm hopeful that I will have the AFL-CIO endorsement this year.
We're running long, so we're gonna stop the questions. Hopefully, the few minutes that we'll have left, as people are leaving, you can attack the person you want to with your question. A direct hit. Thank y'all so much for coming. Thank Cherokee and Clay for working together. Something Thank you for turning out, and also, I know that only one person can win, and one person's going to go forward. But I can tell you, you would be silly if you don't use your brains that we got up here, because you've all got great ideas. And if you could find some way to work and incorporate some of the great ideas that are different from yours, I think it would be wonderful. So that's my piece. stop and just, yes,
Somebody acknowledge our other person that's important in this room, Caleb Brown.
but we called for people earlier. Caleb, will you just, Caleb Brown, introduce yourself, come on up.
Sorry, I just want to take a minute. I don't want to crash the show. I was sitting in the back earlier. I have a 2.5-year-old. Apparently, I found out today that she does not like political debates. So, if you heard some crying back there, that was my little one. My name is Caleb Brown, and I am running to be your representative for North Carolina House District 120. That is Clay, Graham, Cherokee, and Macon counties. And I do only want to take one other second. I'm so grateful that I got to be here today and hear from all these wonderful candidates. A lot of our values align, and I look forward to working with all of you in the future. But, you know, when we think about our 4 counties in this part of the state, it came up over and over and over again. We are a rural part of the state. I have 3 main focuses. We have to fully fund our public education system. I'm a teacher, I'm a coach, I've driven a school bus, I'm a second lieutenant in the North Carolina Army National Guard. We have to fund our school system. These are our future leaders. Each and every one of those kids that's in the classroom, one day is going to be sitting up there at a candidate forum just like this. I also want to focus on lowering our household costs, so our household finances. It's another major topic of today's debate, right? And then the last thing that I really want to talk about is we need access to affordable health care. So again, the ideas are the same, and I hope that you'll come out to support me in November as I take on Carl Gillespie and I win North Carolina House District 1. Thank
you. We've got a couple of other people here that are running for office locally. We have Keely Youngblood, are you here? And Sandy Zimmerman. All stand up. Run up and just give a quick introduction. We've got a couple of minutes. This is important.
Well, I'm locking up on you and our cousin. My great-grandfather and he was her great-great-great-grandfather, okay, was a commissioner in 1898. Wow. So that's our history.
Here you go.
Okay. I'm Sandy Zimmerman, and I've been involved in a lot of the works that have gone on in Western North Carolina since I came back home in 2008. So I'm running for commissioner. I'm running unaffiliated. I have my clipboard with me. I need signatures. I'm over halfway there. So I would appreciate any support from any of you who are here, just with your signature. That's what I need most right now. So thank you very much for listening, and watch for me. I work the square and I work a lot of corners in the county, so and get in touch. Ask me what you need to ask.
What are you running for again? I'm sorry.
Clay County Commissioner. Sorry, I thought that was announced that way. Yes. We have 3 seats open this time, and it's the first time in years, just speaking because I've worked with the county for so long. It's the first time we've had this many seats open. So we have a lot of candidates running. But I'm running unaffiliated, and this young lady, Keely, she's running as a Democrat. So here.
Hi, I'm Keely Youngblood. I did not anticipate speaking at this meeting. Thank you, Sydney. Thank you to all of you who did a fabulous job. I am running for Clay County Commissioner on the Democratic Party. I have a Facebook page, Keely Youngblood Stillwell for Clay County Commissioner, if you would like to follow. You can ask me questions on there. You can follow my regular page that has normal information about me. Anyway, I look forward to serving Clay County the best I can for you guys. It's not for me, it's for all of you. So thank you for having me and letting me say my 2 cents.
Did we get everybody? We've got another candidate.
Hi, my name is Judith Bodley. As you can tell, I didn't think I was going to be speaking in front of y'all today. I didn't dress for that. So, overlooked my attire, but I'm glad to have the privilege to introduce myself to y'all. And I'm running for County Commissioner in District 3 in Cherokee County. And thank you. Just like Clay County, we have an unusual amount of seats that are open this time around for the November election. I believe we're going to have 4 of our 5 districts that are going to be up for re-election. I'm from Cherokee County. I was born there, raised my family there. Have never really my family's been in the area for 200 years plus, so it's home. I don't have any idea that I'm ever going to go anyplace else. I plan on being buried there, just like I was born there. So I know people, particularly young families in our area, that are talking about moving from our area because we have such poor schools. They don't want to send their children to the school system. So if they don't want to homeschool, they're actually talking about moving. I also know families in our area that have purchased a piece of land in Georgia, so they have a Georgia address, so their children can go to Georgia schools rather than Cherokee County schools. So we have a huge problem with our school system all over the state of North Carolina. And of course, we're in the rural area, and the rural area is underserved compared to the more populated areas. So we have let down a whole generation of children in our county as far as our education is concerned. We also have issues with the fact that the present county commissioners, the 5 present county commissioners, have sent a letter to Washington saying that they are on board to sell our public lands. I was at the county commissioners meeting when that letter was signed by all 5 of our Republican commissioners and agreed to be sent to Washington. My understanding is they have an agent in Washington that they have working on this project, trying to get our public lands around Lake Hiwassee and our national forest sold to private entities. So we have a major problem in our county at the moment. Our county's done some good things. I don't want to take away from the good things they've done. We're getting a new building for the health department. We've had some new buildings for the EMTs. So some good things are happening. You all have probably also heard, though, that we are having some issues with the sheriff's department. We've had several deaths and a big lawsuit. So I feel like there's issues, systemic issues there that need to be worked out as far as what are we going to put money towards. As commissioners, we're responsible for the fiduciary responsibility for the county. We have to decide where the money goes. We get our taxpayer money. We make up a budget every year. We decide who gets the major amount of the money. Right now, the police department in Cherokee County gets the major part of our money. They get more than our school system gets. They get more than anybody else gets. So I feel like we need to hold them to a higher standard. They're there to protect the community. That's our number one responsibility in a community, if we're overseeing it, is to make sure our citizens are safe. But we also have a responsibility to see that it's done in the best way possible, so that we don't have lawsuits, so that we don't have unwarranted deaths. Okay, so thank you for letting me speak. I get a little long-winded, and I hope that y'all that live in Cherokee County will come out and support me for District 3.
Woo! Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Thank you for being here.